Hey, welcome back. It's Louisa Munson from Feel Good Astrology with another lesson from Venus. This time I'm having a look at sexual planets over the next couple of episodes. So let's have a look. Like, what do you think I mean by sexual planets? I mean, how can planets be sexual? Well, it's interesting because actually there are lots of different theories, and there's a group of astrologers known as Magi astrologers, which I really quite enjoy what they've written in terms of their interpretations and predictions and things like that. And they talk quite a bit about sexual planets. And the ones that they are talking about are Venus, Mars, Neptune, and Pluto. Now, obviously, the angles are important in any chart that we look at, and the sun and the moon. So I always think the sun, the moon, the ascendant and the descendant are absolutely vital when it comes to romance, and when it comes to us expressing a side of us that's really important, i.e. love. Now, Venus, we've spoken about quite a lot. Venus is the planet to do with flow and goodness, and very much associated with love, very much associated with connection and intimacy, and friendship, so she's obviously high up there. But then we've also got Mars, because like Venus isn't necessarily a sexual planet. In some signs, she definitely expresses herself in a sexual way. For instance, in the sign of Aries and Scorpio, she's very physical. And as you've probably learnt from the previous episode when I was talking about the planetary strength, she's not very happy in those signs. In general, she's much happier in signs where she can express her ability to love and connect. But Mars, however, is very content to show us a physicality of our body. And Mars, in particular, when it's combined with Venus or the sun and the moon, can show where we might be particularly physical in terms of lovemaking, where we might have a gusto for it, where we might really be quite horny, etc., etc. So Mars is a very, very much a planet that shows us where we're getting turned on and revved up and getting excited and wanting to use our bodies. Now, Neptune's an interesting one. At one end of the spectrum, I'm going to say, Neptune represents our desire to merge. It's the highest it's a higher octave of Venus, apparently, so it's higher love, and showing us where we want to merge into that infinity. Neptune isn't known for having boundaries. And of course, in terms of lovemaking and sexuality and stuff, Neptune really shows how the borders between person A and person B appear to dissolve, when you're coming together. Neptune really adds, I think, quite a spiritual cast over lovemaking. So if Neptune's very strong in your chart, you are likely to be more attracted to the spirituality of lovemaking. Pluto is very much about power and dominance, and also the whole idea of the death of the ego. It's interesting, like the whole term, I think in the French language, to come, to have an orgasm, I think is known as la petite mort, because it's like a little death. It's like a little death of you occurs, because in that moment of amazing release with the orgasm, it's like a part of you has died. You have given up something. You have forgotten who you are in that moment of having an orgasm. It's like the death of the ego, like you forget who you are because you're in such intense pleasure. Now, the Magi astrologers also put Juno in on this list, and I use Juno a lot. I think Juno is a fantastic character. In mythology, Juno is known as the goddess of marriage. She's also about commitment and dedication, what we absolutely really are committed to. Now, in terms of transits and astrology, she sometimes shows up in the charts of people, especially in a very, very strong way, in the charts of people that might have infidelities or be one partner in an affair, because it shows a different kind of connection at times, so she can show marriage, but she can also show where, like, for instance, I have noticed that she can show up as a form of interference in your marriage. If like she's transiting over a sensitive part, it might show that another person is trying to come in, She's also a little bit on the naughty side. You know, in astrology, I've noticed that she represents a kind of sexual energy. So she can be known as a bit of a harlot. It's so funny, isn't it, that she is known for being the goddess of marriage, but also possibly a mistress and a little bit of illicit lovemaking, possibly. Now, there are also other asteroids. I'm going the wrong way. I would also include Eros in there. In fact, I thought I had included Eros, but I've forgotten to put him on the list, but he is there. Now, Eros is an asteroid that I often put in because Eros, if you think of the mythology of Eros or Eros, it's very much about erotica. It's very much about the turn on, the mechanisms of being suddenly switched on to something. And Eros really shows very much in the initiation and the starting. It's like the starter motor. So if your Eros is very big in your chart, then, you know, and in a very sort of prominent place, you may well find that you have a lot of erotic thoughts and a lot of things kind of getting things going for you. So let's see how this might add a little bit more description about somebody in your chart. So, for instance, let's have a look at this particular chart. So this person's chart is a woman. Her Venus is in the sign of Cancer in the 11th. I've not looked at this chart in this series before. I may well be looking at it a little bit more as we go through. But anyway, this person's got their Venus in Cancer, which is very, very loving, very, very committed, very loyal, very much desirous, you know, desiring to be in a marriage, in a home, in a family. And also Venus in the 11th house. The 11th house is very much about friendship and co-creation and networks. So this is somebody who is also very loyal to friends and is likely to have a very strong friendship with their best mate is the person that becomes their partner. Now her Venus has got some nice connections. For instance, it's in a conjunction with the sun. It's also in a trine with the moon. So this is somebody who I don't think has any difficulty finding love or connecting with somebody that she loves. And she's a very sort of like loving and supportive person. And that comes out in her personality and in her work and stuff like that. She's got her Mars in Virgo in the first house. Now, Mars in the first house is quite physical. The first house is all about our ability to feel things and to be physical in our body. Mars isn't very happy in the sign of Virgo. However, Mars does seem to really quite like being in the first house. The first house has some resonance. If you think the first house is associated with signs such as Aries, you know, it's about me first, and it's about being physical and being very comfortable being physical in her body. So this is somebody who probably takes care of their body, given that Mars is in the sign of Virgo, and Virgo is very much about health and well-being and being very fit for purpose. And so she's got her Mars there. So this is somebody who wants to be fit, feel good in her body, and be quite active. And she's got some very good connections with her Mars as well. So she's got good Venus connections, good Mars connections. They're not actually connecting themselves. However, let's see what else occurs. Neptune, she's got in the sign of Sagittarius, which like Neptune and Pluto are very much about the era that somebody is born in. So this is somebody, Neptune in Sagittarius, I think is where lovemaking is becoming a little bit more adventurous and people are a little bit more philosophical. It's also showing up in the Gen X's, mid-range Gen X's, and you know, it's showing up that people are partnering in different ways now from their generation onwards, or ours, because I'm a Gen Xer myself. So yeah, there's a different feeling about romance. Like maybe we might want to have romantic partners that we can be philosophical with. You know, there was a time when people were matched, you know, like people came together and they weren't really expecting to have their best friend, their co-worker, their this, their that, and the other. They were looking for a good match, you know, somebody who might be a good dad or a good provider, not as romantic maybe. People with Neptune in the sign of Sagittarius have come through with a higher expectation of a sort of philosophical, adventurous match for your soul. I find anyway. Pluto showing up in the sign of Libra, which again is interesting because Pluto is about what we're really wanting to control, and also showing something that's very, very important to us, so much so that it starts to control things off. And I think, again, this person is born into an era where we're looking for the one, where the one person is really important, and the idea that there can be the one who is the perfect equal and complement to you, which is I think a very strong motif of the people who have got Pluto in the sign of Libra. Finally, she's got Juno in Virgo. So again, she's got another planet in Virgo, and Juno is sexual. It's also wifely. Her Juno is connected very nicely to Venus, so that's another indication that she probably has no problem attracting men, or I know that men are her preferred gender to connect with, so she has no problems doing that, and also no problems in becoming a wife. She's somebody who attracts a marriage type situation. It's very much in her programming, and it also looks like for her being a wife is a resource, it's part of her value systems, and also she may well work within her relationship, like they do jobs together and stuff. But the Virgo Juno in the second house is also about the value of fitness, the value of wellness, etc. within the relationship. Finally, I did say I was putting in Eros. For her, being turned on doesn't have to actually just start with Mars being physical. Hers is in the sign of Gemini, which is very much verbal. So things that can really get her motor running is a really good dialogue, the feeling that you're in a great conversation. And it doesn't take much to get her going. Like the sign of Gemini does like change and initiation and variety. And it, it likes to be kept busy. And hers is also in the 10th house. I think showing, that it's quite easy to fall in love with people that you have a kind of shared mission with, a shared job with, a shared life, like where it's almost like she's got the perfect chart really for a family business, where, their love takes them on a journey. But anyway, these planets aren't necessarily very well connected with each other. But let's see what happens when we add her husband in and how they are awakened. So it's like her chart's sexual planets are awakened by her husband. So look, for instance, her Mars is here and his Venus is right on her Mars. So we've got a connection between Mars and Venus. Her Venus, so where's her Venus? It's up here, is in a conjunction with his descendant. Now, if you remember, the descendant is the ruler of the 7th house. It's about partnership. It's the perfect partner. So her Venus is showing up where his idea of his perfect partner is. So we've got this Venus angle connection, a Mars-Venus connection. Then Pluto, her Pluto is square his Eros, or is it Eros, which will add a lot of heat. So her need for intensity of feelings, and that intensity of it's almost like there's a control, like he ignites something in her that wants to be controlled, that needs to be acted upon. There's a kind of urgency between them, I would say. And then Juno, her planet of like lovemaking and commitment that wants to express itself, is in a really nice trine to his ascendant, which is there. And it's also in a sextile to his descendant. So it's interesting, isn't it, that the combination of their Venus and Mars and Juno and Pluto are working together in their relationship. Let's just have a look at another example. So we've got somebody else's chart here. And so we've got Venus and Mars together in the sign of Aries in the 7th house, very much boy meets girl, boom, let's make out. This is somebody who absolutely wants to be in a relationship, has been married for a really, really long time, all of her adult life. And she's got this very sort of expressed Venus in the sign of Aries that really does want to be quite physical. Mars in Aries, very physical in the 7th house. This is somebody who I'm sure really likes to make love. Both of these are in an opposition to Pluto, another sexual planet. This is somebody who's very sexual and makes no bones about it. This is also somebody who's got a trine to Neptune, which is really nice. Also a trine to Saturn, which I think is very good in terms of love and sexuality and being able to be persistent with a sexual relationship over many, many years. This one, has got Neptune in Sagittarius, so I won't repeat what I've said about Neptune in Sagittarius, but her Neptune, her desire for love making is showing up on a day by day level. She probably wants to be quite she wants her lovemaking to be really part of her community experience. I'm not saying that she's going out in the community, but like the 3rd house is all about our everyday reality. It's about being home. It's not, the 4th house is very much about the home, but the 3rd house is the kind of environment that we're raised in. And so, this is somebody that's very, very comfortable to make love and has probably grown up with parents that are very open about lovemaking, etc. And it's part of her vocabulary. She's got Pluto in the 1st as well. Pluto, control, sizzly, sexy, in the 1st house of her body. It's also in a loose conjunction with her ascendant. So again, it's on her mind. And then she's got Juno in Scorpio in the 2nd house. So Juno in the sign of Scorpio is very, very sexy there as well. Now let's add in her husband. As you can see, she's got her sexual planets are very much awakened. Like she doesn't need much revving up, but her husband comes in, and actually they've got more aspects together that are less about sex and more about companionship, for instance, and romance. Like their moons are in a conjunction, so they've both got their moons in Pisces, which is really quite dreamy. And drifty. They've both got some very, very strong aspects. So it's probably good that both of their emotions are very mild and sympathetic and helpful towards each other. Her Venus-Mars conjunction is also in a quincunx to Venus in his chart. Now, let me just show you where that is. So there's her Venus and Mars, and they are in a quincunx, this 150-degree angle, which is a very sort of exact angle. And again, I really learnt this from the Magi astrologers. They really like the quincunx. It's also known as an inconjunct. It's a 150-degree angle, but it is seen as being really quite desirable in the charts of lovers, people that get together and stay together. His Mars is conjunct her Sun, so it's one of his sexual planets to her identity, I'm guessing. So he really likes the way she looks, and it makes him feel very, very physical. His Eros and Uranus conjunction here are in a conjunction with her North Node, which is very, very nice. So there's this feeling that they are going in this direction together, that he's very much coming into her life to really shape her life going forwards, which really that has happened. Juno is trine his Saturn. So there's her Juno. Where's his Saturn? It's up there. He's also got Saturn and Juno in a conjunction, which is actually seen as being a lovely symbol of marriage, and marriage coming together. So, for instance, where somebody's Saturn and the other person's Juno come together, that's seen as very beneficial. His Jupiter is also conjunct her South Node. So South Node is really showing where, there it is. Funny enough, his South Node is very sort of in between her Sun and his Jupiter. It's actually on the Sun and Jupiter midpoint. So they've both got a South Node connection, implying actually some kind of past life, like they've been together before, and that it was quite an awakening experience. There was this feeling of goodwill. So there you go. That is how I think how the sexual planets can connect. So, you can see I've looked at two different women's charts who are both in long-term marriages. one whose sexual planets maybe aren't that switched on all the time, and the other woman whose sexual planets are definitely raring to go, and then showing the impact of, adding in their husband's charts and how they are reacting with them. So I hope that was helpful. Join me in part 2, where I have a look at another couple of couples, just so that you can explore it a little bit more. But anyway, I hope that was helpful. Bye for now.